Hi kids, to the second video. It's so fun this time of year because harvest is really exciting. It involves late hours sometimes, but the fact that you get to see what you did in the spring yields in the fall with either the bushels or everything. It's just the fun time of year. The temperature's nice and the weather's generally nice. The weather can be kind of crappy sometimes, but when the weather's nice, especially like this year, it's really, really fun. Soybean harvest is a little bit more urgent than corn harvest in the fact that soybeans are very fragile. The pod that the little soybean is in, if it gets wet, the pod inside wants to swell, and once the soybean swells, it sometimes pops the pod open. And the way me as a farmer gets paid for the things that I do involves that little seed that's in that pod, and that's what we are harvesting, is the soybean seed. So it's pretty critical to get the soybean out of the field and into the bin or into the elevator or wherever we're going to either store it or market it. The soybean is harvested with a header that has what's called a reel. It pulls the soybean in, and there's also a sickle on the header that cuts the soybean real close to the ground, and it brings it into the combine. And then what we call thrashing, it kind of grinds the material that the header brings into the combine, and then it sorts out it through a bunch of different things in the combine that are shaking and moving and augering and doing all those kinds of things. It separates the seed from the soybean seed from the pod and the stalk and all of that kind of stuff. The soybeans this year yielded about 55 bushels to the acre. Typically a soybean yield around here will be anywhere from 40 to 65 bushels to the acre. Our soybeans do go to the local elevator and are sold there, and they are not fed. With corn harvest, there's a whole lot more bushels per acre that have to come out. So the corn header for the combine is different in the fact that it only picks the ear. So the only thing that goes through the combine is the ear of corn and the cob that the kernels are attached to. As the whole ear of corn enters this rotor, it just shells the kernels off of the cob, and then the kernels will fall down and the cob goes through the whole combine machine and gets spit out the back, and the corn that falls down through finally gets to the bottom of the combine and then goes up into the grain tank. My job during harvest was to drive the grain cart, and the grain cart is the way that we measure how our field yields because the grain cart has a scale on it. Another purpose of the grain cart is to make the combine more efficient. Every time the combine has to stop and unload or get fuel or do something like that, we're not harvesting. So typically on our farm we use the grain cart and we drive alongside the combine, and the combine will not only harvest at the same time, but it will also unload into the grain cart. Corn will yield anywhere from 140 bushels to 220 bushels to the acre in the area that I live in. And what makes the difference in yield is the type of soil that you have, the topography, and the fertility of the soil. Some farmers' crops will go in a bin. Some farmers' crops will go to the elevator. The fact that we feed cattle all of the crops that we raise except for the soybeans, all of our crop is stored at home, whether it's in the bunker that I've shown you, or a bin, or a silo, or those types of things. We keep the majority of our crop at home. Corn is really a good commodity or crop for us to grow because we not only can use the grain, but we can graze the corn stalks because the husks and the leaves from the corn plant have some nutritional value for the cow. And then we can also harvest the crop residue, the husk and the leaves and some of the stalk. We use a big rake to rake up the majority of the corn plant to put into a bale, and we have a regular hay baler that makes a round bale of corn stalks, and then we can use those corn stalks for anything from feed to bedding to sometimes we'll use them for windbreaks because we can stack them in a row and it will help block the wind for the cattle. Since the crop is so valuable and technology has improved a lot of the things that we do, the lights and the equipment that we have to work with nowadays allow us to work way past dark. If it gets dark about 7 o'clock now, a lot of farmers, depending on the size of their operation, some will run all night long, but we can run all night long because of the lighting that we have and that type of thing. So, but a lot of times on our farm, we will work till 10 o'clock, and if it's gonna rain or snow or something like that, we'll work either till the job is done or midnight or something like that. There's just something about getting the harvest done. Everybody wants to get done with their harvest. They want to make sure that what they planted in the ground and that they've invested their time and their money in gets in some place where they know that they have it and not out in the field.